We begin the Gemara today on Kuf Yud Aleph, 4 lines from the top of the Yama. The Gemara continues regarding different things that we said before in connection to Zugais and the harmful effect that Shadim can have on people. Amar Reish Lakish said, Arba Dvarim, there are 4 different things. Ha'isa Aisan, if someone does them, Domai Bereishai, his blood is on his head, or Mischayev Benafshai, and he's responsible for his own life, for causing to take away his life. Elohein, and these are the 4 things. Hanifne ben dekel lekaisel, you go outside and to relieve yourself between a palm tree and a wall. V'ha'over ben shnei dekolim, you pass through between 2 palm trees. The reason for these 2 are, as we'll see in the Gemara, Rashbam explains, because the Shadim, they don't walk in an open public area where other people are going. But in these places where it's not a Reshus HaRabim, between a palm tree and the wall and a palm tree, that's the places where the Shadim pass through. So if you're obstructing their passage, they can come and harm you. When you drink water, borrowed water, and you pass over water that's spilled on the ground. Even when your wife poured it on the ground in front of you. So now the Gemara is going to go through to explain these 4 things that Reish Lakish said. Someone that relieves himself between a palm tree and the wall, it's only if between the wall and the palm tree there isn't space of 4 amas. Aval islay arba amas, if there's space of 4 amas between them, less lamba, then it's no issue, because you're not obstructing the way of the shadim to be able to pass through. There's enough place. V'chileslei arba amas, and even if there is no space of arba amas in between the wall and the palm tree, lo yamaran ella deleke derka achrine, if there's no other way to pass through there. Aval ikke dircha achrine, but if there's another passageway for the shadim to go through, less lamba, then there's no issue. The next thing that Reish Lakish said, va'oive ben shnei dekolim, if you're passing through between 2 palm trees, so then you're obstructing the way for the shadim. So loya maran, this was only said, ella the loy paskinu reshus harabim. If between these 2 palm trees, it's not an area which is a large enough of a space that there's a reshus harabim passing through between them. Because if there is, have a paskinu reshus harabim, if there is a space of the rabim to pass through there, less lamba, then there's no issue. The shadim don't harm you there, because as I mentioned, the shadim do not go in a place where the reshus harabim passes through. The third thing that Reish Lakish said, Hashaise mayim she'ulin, a person that drinks borrowed water. What is this talking about? Lo yamaran ella de shailinu cotton. We're talking about water that a child borrowed. Aval gadol less lamba. An adult that borrowed water and drinks it is not an issue. The shadim, they want to have water to drink, they go dafke to water of a cotton to drink, so therefore there could be an issue. Cotton, and even when a child borrows water, nami lo yamaran ela besada. This is only if it's out in the field. So the shadim are looking for water to drink. There's no water that's common there. Aval be'ir the shchichi less lamba. But in the city where there's a lot of water to drink, then there's no issue. Even borrowing this water, a child in a field, nami lo yamaran, it also wasn't said elamaya, only regarding water. Aval chamra v'shichra, but if it's beer or wine, less lamba. There's no issue. The 4th thing that Reish Lakish mentioned, v'ha'over al mayim shfuchin, passing over spilled water. Lo yamaran, this was only said, el lo yafsekinu ba'afra, that he did not separate with earth, meaning he did not spread earth over this spilled water. Or v'lo tafbuhu reika, he did not spit into it saliva. Aval afsekinu ba'afra, if he put the earth on this spilled water, or he tafbu reika, or he spit saliva onto it, less lamba, there's no issue. The issue of this spilled water is only if the sun did not come upon it. And 60 footsteps were not stepped over it. But if the sun came over it, or 60 footsteps came over it, less lamba, there's no issue. The issue of walking over water was not said, if he's not riding on a donkey, or he's not wearing shoes. If he's riding on a donkey, he's wearing shoes, less lamba, there's no issue. This that we're saying over here, that there's no issue if you're riding on a donkey or you're wearing shoes and so on, that's only in an area that there's no concern of kishuf. So if we're talking about the concern of Shadim, so then, as long as you're wearing shoes or you're on a donkey and so on, there's no concern. But if you're in a place that you're concerned about Kishuf, Afagav, the Ikke Kolhani, even if you have all of these things mentioned before, the sun came over it, people walked over it, you're wearing shoes, you're on a donkey, nevertheless Chayshinan. In a place of Kishuf, you still have to be worried about the spilled water. And the Gemara brings an incident that happened. Ahu Gavra, the Rochiv Chamre. There was a person that was riding on a donkey, Visayim Misani, and he was wearing shoes, and he went over the spilled water. The Gomed Misane, his shoes shriveled up. Vitzavu Kare, and his feet Tzavu Kare, his shoes shrank. That is, and his feet shriveled up. Tanarabanan, we learned in Abraisa. Shloisha, there are three different things that ain mematzin. We don't want to have them come between us. So what this Braisa is talking about two men. So there are three things that shouldn't pass through between two men. V'loi mismatzen, and we should not pass through. Two men should not pass through these things. What are these three things? Ve'elohein, hakelev, dogs, v'hadekel, two palm trees, as we mentioned before, if they're close enough. V'ha'isha, and two women. So a woman should not pass through between two men, and a man should not pass through between two women. V'yesh oimrim, and others say afa chazir. The same is also regarding a chazir. V'yesh oimrim afa nochosh, the same with a snake. And so this is from this whole entire sugya, the whole Gemara here about all these things. This is brought in Shulchan Aruch. The Alter Rebbe brings this in Shulchan Aruch and Hilchas Shmiras HaNefesh to be careful not to walk between two women, and a woman should not walk between two men, because there's a ruach ra that comes through this. V'im matzin. And if a woman did walk through between two men, so how do you rectify this? Amar Rav Papa, niftach, you should say a pasuk that begins bekel, with the Eibish's name Kel, v'nafsik bekel, and it also concludes with the Eibish's name Kel. The Rashbamir brings the pasuk Kel moitziam mitzrayim, and it concludes ma paul Kel. Inami, another thing you could say is niftach b'loi, say a pasuk that begins with the word loi, v'nafsik b'loi, and conclude with the pasuk that says loi. The Rashbam quotes the pasuk loi ish kel, and add v'loi yikimena. Hani beitrei, there was an incident. Hani beitrei the matziluhu isha nida. These two men, that a woman, which is a nida, passes through them. What's going to happen to them? If it's at the beginning of her being a nida, she causes that one of them will be killed. If she passes through two men and it's the end of the time when she's a nida, so then she'll cause a fight to be between them. Again, if this happens, how do you rectify this? Niftach bekel v'nafsik bekel. Say a pasuk that begins with the name Kel and ends with the name Kel, and yeah. That's the eights over here. There's an incident they say with the Rebbe, that the Rebbe was once coming to 770, and there was two girls that were standing on both sides of the shvil, and the Rebbe came up, and what did the Rebbe say? The Rebbe said, go tell a good Shabbos. And the Rebbe didn't want to pass through between them. Yeah. Okay, sagt die Gemara weiter, when you get two women that you encounter, over here, Hanitrei Noshi, the two women, the Yosvin, Beprashas Rachim, if you see two women that are sitting by a fork in the road, Chode Bahaigi, so one is sitting on one side of the road, the Shvila of the pathway, V'chode Be'idach Gisa, and the other one on the other side of the pathway, Umechavda Napayula Adodi, and they're facing one another, Vadai B'chshofim Asikon, they're definitely busy with Kishuf, so you should not pass through there. So what should you do? You have to travel there. If you have another way to go, go another way. If you have no other way to go, so what do you do? So if you have another person along with you, they should hold hands one with another, and then they can pass through. And if there's no other person to be with you, so say as follows. And here there's a couple of names of Shadim. Ogris, Ozlis, Asya, Blusya, bunch of names of Shadim here. Miskatla b'cheik kaval is killed with arrows in the cheik, which is in my lap, or
crossbow.
Crossbow. So you say this lachash, you say this, and you're able to cross through.
All
Yeah, all these names of the Shadim, and you say that they're killed with a crossbow. Haiman the poga beitze, a person that encounters a woman, beidne the salka mitfilas mitzvah, in the time when she comes out of the mikveh, from being toivling a tfilas mitzvah. So then, if he is going to first have marital relations, an immoral spirit will grab hold of him. And if she is going to have relations first, then she will have an immoral spirit that will grab hold of her. How do you rectify this? If you do encounter a woman that was coming out of a mikveh,
husband and wife?
No, a different man that encounters this woman. So he should say as follows: this pasuk, Shoifech buz al nedivim vayasim besoyu loy dorach. Eibishter pours scorn on the noble ones, and he confuses them to go in a desolate place, no place. So
she's going to men, is it
again?
She wants to go between two men?
Not between, no, pogas, to come to encounter, to see, yeah. That's the pasuk that's brought over here, but there's another pasuk, others are gairis, a different pasuk. This is brought in the Shach, in Yeridei, and Simon Kuf Tzadik Ches, he brings this Inyan, that, a person shouldn't be in a place where there's a mikveh for women, that a woman should not encounter a man coming out of the mikveh. And Taisvis, not over here, but there's in another place where Taisvis asks the question. There's the Gemara that says about Rabbi Yechanan ben Zakkai, that he used to sit by the mikveh for the women to come out and see him when he comes out, so they should have beautiful children. So how could it be? The Gemara here says that a woman should not encounter a man when she comes out of the mikveh. Taisus gives a few answers. One of the answers of Taisus is that the issue of what the Gemara speaks about over here is only when a man encounters a woman immediately, when she comes out of the mikveh, when she's not dressed. That's the issue, not after she comes out of the mikveh, after she's dressed. So Rabbi Yechanan was sitting later when they came out of the place of the mikveh. That's one answer in Taisus. But there's other answers as well, which means that the issue could even be also when a woman comes out of the mikveh, even after she's dressed. Amar Rav Yitzchak. Okay, Chanami. So, but at least in that there's a hakpada in that area where there's a mikvahs noshim that you walk in another place.
There is something that says that the lady you can touch her something. That's what it takes.
Could be. Amar Rav Yitzchak said, "Mai dichsiv." So what is this that it says in the Basik? Gam ki eleich begeitz al mavis. Even when I walk in a valley in the shadow of death, lo ira ra, I'm not afraid of any evil. Ki atu modi, because the Eibush is with me. What is this referring to? Ze hayashon b'tzeil dekel yechidi, a person that sleeps in the shade of a single palm tree. Again, this is a place where shadim are there. Or b'tzeil levana, or in the shadow of the moon. Ubetzeil dekel yechidi, when we said a person that sleeps in the shadow of a palm tree, lo yamaran el nafel tule de chavrei ilavei, that if there's another palm tree in that area, the shade of the other palm tree, the shadow that is of the other palm tree, does not fall upon this palm tree. They're far enough that they don't connect to each other. That's considered to be a single palm tree. But if the shadow of the other palm tree is close enough that it falls upon this palm tree, less lamba, then there's no issue to sleep there because it's not a single palm tree. According to this, what's the pshat in this that we learned in the Braisa? Hayashon betzeil dekel yechidi, a person that sleeps in the shadow of a single palm tree, b'chotzer. In this Braisa it says that it's in a courtyard. Vayashon betzeil levana, you sleep in the shadow of the levana, domei beroishay, your blood is on your head. So over here, this Braisa mentions specifically a courtyard. Why? Heichidami, what are we speaking about? If this Braisa is speaking about a single palm tree, that the shadow of another palm tree is not close enough and it doesn't fall upon this palm tree. Why does the Braisa mention specifically Chatzir even out in the field as well? From here we can see the chatzir, that a single palm tree and a chatzir is different. Even if there's a different palm tree that's close enough that its shadow will fall upon this palm tree, nevertheless, you shouldn't sleep in the shadow of a palm tree in a chatzir. Shmami no, that's the pshat in this Braisa. Ubetzila shalavana, regarding sleeping in the shadow of the lavana, loya maran, this was only said ela b'marava. Only the shadow of the levana that's on the ma'irav side. Rashbam explains that means in the end of the month, when the levana is in the mizrach of the sky, so the shadow of the levana is going to be on the ma'irav. So the issue of sleeping in the shadow of the levana is only in the shade of the levana, is only in the end of the month. If it's in the sale of the Levana in the beginning of the month, and then the sale of the Levana is on the Ma'ariv side, because the Levana is on the east of the sky, in the Mizrach of the sky, then there's no issue. Hi man, the mafni agirde the dikle, someone that relieves himself on the stump of a palm tree. Achtele lididei ruach palge. He's going to get a spirit palge, which is from the shadim, will grab hold of him. V'haiman the matzli reishe agirde the dikle, a person that leans his head on the stump of a palm tree. Achtele ruach tzroda, a spirit tzroda will grab hold of him. Haiman the pasia dikle, a person that steps over a palm tree. I mikdal, if it was cut down, kotl, he will be cut and he will die. I ekar, if it was uprooted, me'akar umeis, he's going to be uprooted and die. Hanimili, this that we just said, you walk over a palm tree. The lemonach kare ilave, that you didn't put your feet, you didn't step upon the palm tree. In other words, you sort of hopped over it. Avamonach kare ilave, but if you did step on this palm tree, less lamba, then there's no issue. Talk to Gemara, Chamisha Tuli Have. There are 5 different shades. Tule the dikle yichide, the shade of a single palm tree, as we mentioned before. Tule the chanda, the tula of a kanda. What is the kanda again?
A lot tree.
A lot tree. Okay, I'm not sure what kind of tree that is. Okay, tula the parcha, a tula of a sorb tree. Don't know what that is either. No, sorry, the parcha is actually a caper bush.
Fig tree.
Huh? No, I know, but in our Gemara we don't have it. I know they bring that gears here.
Bush, yeah,
Tula de parcha is a caper bush. Tula de zradita, which is a sorb tree. Okay, so we over here it actually only says 4 things. So therefore, some agayt is 4 instead of chamisha arba, and some add other things over here. Some add the shade also of a fig tree. Okay, ikkedamri. Others say af tula de arba, that also the shade from a boat, or the tula de arvis, the shade of a willow tree. So all of these things are negative. They're places where the shadim are. Klala de milsa, here's the rule. It's not only these ones, but the rule is as follows. Kol de nofesh anfe, a tree that has a lot of branches, kashi tule. So the shade is as harmful. V'chol de kashi silve, any tree that has the wood that's harmful, in other words, the wood of the tree is like with thorns, kashi tule. So the shade of this tree is also harmful. Levar mikaru masha. Besides this tree called karu masha. Do they translate it there? What that is? I don't even know if there's a translation for this. This kind of tree, karu masha, afal gav the kashi silve, even though the wood is harmful, has thorns in it, loy kashi tule. The shade is not harmful. And why not? The amir shida lebrei, because we heard that a shade said to its son, Pirchi nafshech mikaru masha, fly away from this tree karu masha, the iu, the kotla avuch, because this tree killed your father, v'kotla didei, and it'll kill him also, it'll kill you also. Amar Ravashi said, Chazine l'Rav Kahane, I saw Rav Kahane, the parish mikula tuli. He would stay away from any shades. He was careful, he stayed away from any shades. Sagt the Gemara weiter, here the Gemara brings different names of shadim. Bei parchi, amongst so Bei parchi again was a sorb tree, ruchi. There's a spirit, an evil spirit over there. The Bei zradita, which is what again? Again, Bei parchi is the caper bush. Okay, Bei zradita is the sorb tree. Shida, that's where the shadim are. The Bei igri, on a rooftop, rishpi, there's the fiery shadim over there. Lamai nafke, flaming shadim. Lamai nafke mineh, what difference is there to know all of this? L'kamei, if you're making an amulet, a kamei, to know exactly what to write in it, to go against these shadim, to know exactly what it is. The Bei parchi, the shadim that are there by the caper bush, berye she'en lo einayim, it's a shade that has no eyes. Lamai nafke mineh, why is that relevant? L'gzuzi lo, to know that you can run away from it. Zimnocha, because it can't see. Zimnocha da'ava asal tzurbe merabana lafnuye Bei parchi. Once there was a Talmud Chacham that went to relieve himself by the caper bush. Shama de ka'aseh lavei, he heard that the shadim are coming to him. V'gazila, he ran away. So ki ozlo, when this shed came, chavke, he was running after this Talmud Chacham, he didn't see where he's going. Chavke ledikle, so he bumped into a tree, he embraced a palm tree. Tzavach dikle, this palm tree shriveled up, upakahi, and the shade burst. Parche de beis radete. So the word parche is really, some take it out because it doesn't really fit in here at all. The beis radete, shady, as we said before, by this radete, which is the sorb tree. So there's the shadim there. Ha Zradeta, the Smiche Lemasa, when you come to this Zradeta tree, this sorb tree that's near a city, Leipachasa Mishitten Shady. There's no less than 60 Shadim that are there in that area. What's this relevant to know that there are 60 Shadim there? Lemichtav la Kameya, to know that you have to write a Kameya not only for one shed, but for 60 Shadim. And the Gemara brings an incident that happened with this. Ahubar Kasha de Masa, there was a guard of a city. The Ozal V'koy Gabiz Radeta. The Avasamach Lamasa, he was standing near the sorb tree that was near a city. Olu Bey Shitten Shady, the 60 Shadim entered into him, Ve'istachin, and he was in danger. Asalahu Rabbanon, he came to one of the Rabbanon, the Loyoda, that did not know, the Zradeta, the Shitten Shadim Havi, that this was Shadim, the 60 Shadim were there. He didn't know this. So Kosav La Kameya, this Rabbanon wrote to him, a Kameya, L'chodeshida, just for one shed. So Shama, but then afterwards he heard the Tolu Chindge Begavei, that these Shadim are still hanging, they're still dancing or they're playing music inside the tree. He only made a Kameya for one of the Shadim, but the other Shadim was still dancing around over there. And they were singing and saying as follows. Sudre de Mar, the handkerchief of this master, Kitzur b'Merabanan, is like the handkerchief that the Talmidei Chachamim wear. In those times, it was only the Talmidei Chachamim that wore a yarmulke. So he says he's wearing a yarmulke. But Badikne Bey, we inspected him, we checked into him, B'Mar, and the master, the Loyada Barach, he doesn't know how to make a bracha. In other words, these Shadim were mocking him the fact that his Kameya was not effective because he wasn't aware that there were really 60 Shadim there. Then Asa Humer Rabbanon, another one of the Rabbanon came. The Yoda, the Zradata, the Shitten Shady Ave, and he knew that there was 60 Shadim there. Kosav La Kameya, the Shitten Shady, and he wrote a Kameya that was effective for 60 Shadim. So Shama, then they heard the Ka'amru that the Shadim were saying, Panu Manaich Mahacha, get your vessels out of here, we have to leave this place because of the effect of this Kameya. Dr. Gemara weiter, Ketev Meriri, the Shadim that are called Ketev Meriri, Trei Kitvi Have. There are two Shadim with the name Ketev Meriri. Chad Mekamet Tire, one is for before the noontime, Chad Mibasa Tire, one is afternoon. The Mekamet Tire, the one before noon, its name is Ketev Meriri Shmai. That's his name. Umechzi Bekade de Kamche, and it appears in a jug of Kamche, which is the Kutach of Bava, which we had many times before, Vahadebe Bachasha, and it's like a stirring spoon inside this Kutach. The Basa Tire, this Ketev that comes in the afternoon, Ketev Yoshut Saharayim Shemai, its name is Ketev Yoshut Saharayim, Umechzi Bekarne de Iza, it appears in the horns of a goat, Vahada Bekanfia, and it goes around like a sieve. Abaye have a shokol va'ozl. Abaye was going on his way. V'ozl Rav Papa mimine, Rav Papa was accompanying him on the right, Varavune bered Rav Yeshua mismal, and Ravune bered Rav Yeshua was on the left. Chazilahu Ketev Meriri. So Abaye noticed that there was this shed Ketev Meriri, the Ka'asala Api the smaller, that was coming to his left. In other words, where Rav Huna bered Rav Yeshua was. So Ahadre Rav Papa l'smale, Rav Huna bered Rav Yeshua l'yimine. He switched their positions. He put Rav Papa on the left and Rav Huna bered Rav Yeshua on the right. And so Amalei Rav Papa said to Abaye, Ano Maishna Ano de lechashashli. So why are you putting me on the left where the shed was coming? You weren't concerned about me that I'm going to be encountered by this shed. Amalei, so Abaye told him, no, I wasn't. At shaite kaimeslach. Your time, this is your time, meaning this, because Rav Papa was rich and his mazel was good, so if I wasn't concerned about you being attacked by a shed. Michad betamos, from Rish Chodesh Tammuz at Shitze Be until the 16th day in Tammuz, Tazayin Tammuz, Vadai Shchichi. Definitely, Shadim are more common. Mikan ve'elech, from there going forward, Sofik Shchichi, Sofik Lo Shchichi. So it's a doubt whether they're Shchiach, whether they're here or not. Umishtakhi, where they found Betule the Chatzve, in the shade of this grass that's called Chatzve, it's a certain kind of grass that grows. So in this grass of Chatzve, that's where it's found. The Lechotzav Garmida. But it's only this grass that's not a amalong. Ubetule the tzafre opanya, and it's also found in the shade that you have in the morning and in the evening. The lehava garmida, which the shade which is not an amalong. V'ikir, and primarily where they found betule the beis hakisei, in the shade that there is in the bathrooms. Rav Yosef said. So this is the conclusion of all the union of the shadim. Now the Gemara brings up other things that can cause a person harm. So Rav Yosef said, Hani tlas mili, these three things, yoev arbaina linahira, will cause blindness to a person that can see. What are they? What does the Bach say over here? Okay. Man the sadik reishe yavish, a person that combs his hair when it's dry. Man the shasi tif, a person that drinks the last drops from a barrel from wine. Uman the sayim misani, adam aisine kare taloi. Again, Amanda Messiah Masani, someone that Manda Messiah Masani, someone that ties his shoes Adam Sinekare, while his feet are still wet. Okay, so this is something that the Rebbe once spoke about this in the Fabrengen, Tavshimem Gimel, when you get to drying your feet well before you get dressed after the mikveh. It's also brought in Kabbalah about this, that you should dry your feet very well before you put on your socks and shoes. Okay, so these three things cause a person to be blind. Taloi bebeise, if you hang bread in your house, kashi la'aniyusa, this can cause a person to be poor. Kedamri inchi, like people say, tale silta, if you're hanging the flour, you're hanging the bread, a basket of bread in your house, tale mezayne. So you're hanging also your sustenance. In other words, you're distancing your sustenance, your panasa from yourself. The issue of hanging your food in the house is only with bread. Avo bisre, but if you're hanging a piece of meat or vekavri, a piece of fish, less lambad, then there's no issue. Why? Because orchehi, this is the way you preserve it. You hang it and it dries. Pari bebeise kashala niyusa. If you have bran in your house, bread made out of bran, this is also something which can bring for poverty. Neshure bebeise, if you have or nashvara bebeise, if you have pieces of bread in your house, and some say that this means if you have pieces of bread that are scattered around on the floor in your house, kashila niyusa, this could bring poverty. Beleile Shabbosis, on the night of Shabbos, Friday night, or Beleile Revius, and on Tuesday night, sharu mazikin ilavei, the mazikin will come upon him. Isre de Mezayne Nokid Shmei, the minister of the Shadim of Mezaynes, his name is Nokid. Nokid means cleanliness. Meaning, so therefore he doesn't like when there's bread and things, dirt cascaded around the floor. Isre da'aniyusa, the shed, the minister of the shed of poverty, Novel Shmei. His name is Novel. Okay, u'masayim b'teiv.